public castration, disembowelment while conscious, and dismemberment before death. Hugh Despenser's 1326 execution wasn't quick beheading. It was calculated spectacle where executioners kept him alive through multiple mutilations while crowds cheered each new atrocity. His death took hours of systematic butchery designed to maximize suffering and provide entertainment for thousands. This is why Hugh Despenser's execution was far more horrifying than you think, representing medieval punishment at its most theatrical, brutal, and politically calculated. Hugh Despenser the Younger's execution represents the pinnacle of medieval public punishment, combining political revenge, legal theatre, and calculated brutality into a spectacle designed to destroy not just his body, but his legacy, family, and any sympathy observers might feel. The execution was carefully choreographed to maximize suffering, humiliation, and public impact. Despenser's rise to power came through his relationship with King Edward II, becoming the king's favourite and most influential advisor. His political dominance created enemies throughout English nobility who resented his power, wealth accumulation, and influence over the king. When Queen Isabella and Roger Mortimer launched their successful rebellion against Edward II, Despenser became their primary target for revenge. Capture came after attempted escape to France failed, with Despenser's ship intercepted and forced back to England where rebel forces waited. His capture marked the beginning of his destruction, with captors deliberately starving him during transport to execution site. The forced starvation served dual purposes, weakening him physically while beginning the public humiliation that would culminate in his execution. Trial proceedings were predetermined theatre where Despenser faced charges of treason, theft, and various crimes against the realm. The trial outcome was never in doubt. Conviction and death were guaranteed before proceedings began. The legal process served to legitimize predetermined punishment through facade of justice, creating appearance of lawful execution rather than political murder. The execution sentence specified drawing, hanging, disemboweling, castration, and quartering, the full punishment for high treason designed to destroy traitors through maximum suffering and post-mortem humiliation. Each punishment component carried symbolic meaning. Drawing represented degradation, hanging signified criminality, disemboweling destroyed the body, castration eliminated lineage, and quartering distributed remains as warnings throughout the kingdom. The execution would demonstrate what happened to those who challenged royal authority and accumulated power beyond their station. Execution day began with Despenser's public procession through London, naked except for cloth covering his genitals, with crown of nettles placed on his head and biblical verses about pride and downfall written on his skin. The procession served to maximize humiliation while allowing crowds to mock, insult, and throw refuse at the condemned man before his execution began. The nettle crown represented mockery of his previous power and pride, with the stinging plants causing constant pain and facial swelling that added physical suffering to psychological humiliation. The crown symbolism mocked his ambitions and elevated status, reducing him to a ridiculous figure rather than powerful noble facing heroic death. Biblical inscriptions on his body proclaimed his sins and divine judgment, framing the execution as religious punishment rather than purely political revenge. The verses established theological justification for upcoming brutality, allowing authorities to claim divine sanction for systematic torture and destruction of Despenser's body. Starvation effects became visible during the procession, with Despenser's weakened condition making him barely able to walk unassisted. The deliberate starvation ensured he couldn't resist or fight during execution while making his suffering more visible to watching crowds. His physical deterioration became part of the spectacle, demonstrating his fall from power through visible bodily destruction. Crowds lining the procession route numbered in thousands, with execution day becoming public holiday that drew spectators from across the region. The massive crowd attendance demonstrated the execution's importance as political statement and public entertainment. Citizens gathered to witness the destruction of the king's favourite, celebrating the end of his power through anticipation of coming violence. The procession route was deliberately extended to maximise public exposure and humiliation time, with Despenser paraded through major streets to ensure maximum witness attendance and crowd interaction. The extended journey served to exhaust him further while building anticipation for the execution proper, yet the procession was merely prelude to the systematic destruction that would follow. The execution site was 50-foot gallows specifically constructed for maximum visibility and symbolic impact, ensuring that enormous crowds could witness every moment of Despenser's destruction. The elevated platform meant that execution became theatrical performance visible from great distances, transforming personal destruction into public entertainment. Executioners prepared their instruments publicly, displaying knives, torches, and hooks to crowd while explaining upcoming procedures. The public preparation served to increase Despenser's terror while heightening crowd anticipation for coming violence. Spectators cheered as executioners demonstrated tools and described their uses in graphic detail. Hanging came first, but specifically designed to avoid killing. Executioners hanged Despenser just long enough to cause near suffocation before cutting him down while fully conscious. The partial hanging created oxygen deprivation that caused panic and brain effects while ensuring he remained aware for subsequent tortures. Recovery from near suffocation took minutes, during which executioners prepared next stages. Castration followed while Despenser remained conscious, with executioners cutting off his genitals and holding them before his face before throwing them into fire, prepared specifically for burning his body parts. The castration served multiple purposes, inflicting intense localized agony, symbolically destroying his lineage, and beginning the dismemberment process that would continue through subsequent stages. Genital burning created smell and visual horror that intensified crowd reaction, while forcing Despenser to witness destruction of his own body parts. The public burning demonstrated complete destruction rather than mere killing, with executioners ensuring nothing remained that could be recovered or venerated by potential supporters. Disemboweling began while Despenser still lived, with executioners cutting open his abdomen and extracting intestines while he watched. The disemboweling process was conducted slowly and carefully to maintain consciousness and maximize suffering duration. Executioners had sufficient anatomical knowledge to avoid immediately fatal cuts while ensuring complete evisceration. Internal organ removal was performed sequentially, with executioners displaying each organ to crowd before burning them. The systematic display turned Despenser's body into exhibition piece, with each removed organ representing another step in his destruction. Crowd reaction intensified with each new mutilation, creating feedback loop where spectator enthusiasm encouraged executioner brutality. The entire process from hanging through disemboweling was designed to keep Despenser alive and conscious for maximum possible duration. Death finally came through decapitation after Despenser had endured castration and disemboweling while remaining conscious. Executioners timed the beheading to occur just before complete death from organ removal, ensuring maximum suffering duration while preventing death from shock or blood loss before all planned mutilations were completed. Beheading itself was performed after Despenser had experienced enough agony that death became merciful release rather than feared punishment. The timing transformed killing stroke into relief from suffering, inverting normal execution dynamics where death represented the punishment. Instead, death ended agony that had become unbearable. The corpse received further mutilation through quartering that divided Despenser's body into pieces for distribution throughout England. As warnings to potential traitors, executioners dismembered the body at major joints, shoulders, hips, creating 4 quarters plus separated head and torso. The systematic division ensured complete bodily destruction beyond any possibility of recovery or proper burial. Body part distribution sent Despenser's remains to multiple cities, whether they were displayed publicly on pikes, walls, and bridges as permanent warnings about treason consequences. The geographical distribution maximized the execution's political impact, transforming single event into ongoing visual reminder visible across the kingdom for months or years. Head preservation involved boiling or tarring to prevent decay, allowing prolonged public display that kept Despenser's execution impact fresh in public memory. The preserved head was mounted on London Bridge, where it remained visible for years, serving as continuous warning to anyone considering challenging royal authority. The execution's broader impact extended beyond Despenser's personal destruction to affect his entire family and associates. His property was confiscated, his titles stripped, his family disinherited, and left penniless. The punishment's extensiveness demonstrated that treason consequences affected not just individuals, but their entire familial and social networks. Political message was clear and intentional. Those who accumulated power through royal favoritism and challenged noble authority would face not just death, but systematic destruction designed to erase them from existence while providing entertainment and warnings to watching populations. The execution's aftermath created lasting impact on English political culture and execution practices, establishing templates for treason punishment that persisted for centuries. Despenser's execution demonstrated how state violence could combine legal procedure, public spectacle and political messaging into comprehensive punishment systems. Public reaction to the execution was enthusiastic celebration rather than horror, with crowds treating the event as entertainment and justice rather than barbaric cruelty. The positive public response legitimized extreme violence as appropriate response to political crimes, creating cultural acceptance of brutal punishment methods. Historical documentation of Despenser's execution came from multiple contemporary sources that recorded details with graphic precision, suggesting that the execution was considered significant enough to merit careful recording and preservation. The detailed historical accounts reveal how medieval society understood and recorded extreme violence as important political and social events. Legal precedent established by Despenser's execution influenced subsequent treason punishments, with his death becoming template for combining multiple torture methods into single extended execution. Future traitors face similar punishment sequences that deliberately prolonged suffering while maximizing public visibility and political messaging. Symbolic significance of the execution extended beyond immediate political context to represent broader medieval attitudes towards state power, public punishment, and appropriate responses to treason. The execution demonstrated medieval understanding that punishment should match crime's severity while providing public entertainment and political messaging. Modern historical analysis recognizes Despenser's execution as an example of how medieval justice combined legal procedure with theatrical violence to create comprehensive punishment systems that served multiple purposes simultaneously: revenge, deterrence, entertainment, and political messaging. The execution reveals fundamental medieval belief that appropriate punishment for serious political crimes required complete destruction of offenders through systematic violence that erased them from existence while providing lasting warnings to potential future criminals. Hugh Despenser's execution wasn't aberration or excessive cruelty. It represented standard medieval approach to treason punishment, where state violence served as public spectacle designed to demonstrate power, exact revenge, and warn others through graphic display of what happened to those who challenged authority. Your modern understanding of capital punishment through quick, lethal injection or even electric chair completely misses the medieval reality where executions were extended. Theatrical performances designed to maximize suffering, humiliate condemned prisoners, and provide entertainment for enormous crowds who celebrated rather than recoiled from systematic violence. The calculated nature of Despenser's execution, from preliminary starvation through timed mutilations designed to maintain consciousness, reveals sophisticated understanding of how to inflict maximum suffering while creating memorable spectacle that served political purposes beyond simple killing. The public celebration of Despenser's torture and death demonstrates how different medieval attitudes toward violence were from modern sensibilities. What modern observers would consider horrific atrocity was considered appropriate justice and entertaining spectacle by medieval crowds who gathered in thousands to watch systematic destruction of political prisoners. The execution's legacy extended far beyond Despenser's personal destruction, establishing precedents and patterns for political violence that persisted through early modern period and influenced execution practices for centuries. The execution became template, showing how state violence could combine legal legitimacy with theatrical brutality to create comprehensive punishment systems. Medieval justice wasn't about humane treatment or quick deaths. It was about demonstrating state power through spectacular violence that transformed punishment into entertainment while sending unmistakable messages about consequences of challenging authority. Despenser's execution represented this system at its most developed and brutal. Hugh Despenser's execution wasn't excessive cruelty, it was standard medieval treason punishment, combining systematic torture, public humiliation, and extended suffering designed to erase offenders while entertaining crowds. His death took hours of calculated mutilations that kept him conscious through castration, disemboweling, and dismemberment before final beheading brought merciful death.